On wheels, built to perform better and look cooler. Take racing to new heights.
Hi everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to our review of Hot Wheels Unleashed 2, which comes out this week on the Nintendo Switch. We're going to go over the different game modes, how it plays on the Nintendo Switch. Specifically, I'll be looking at performance, as well as the different visual options they've included, and we'll have a little chat around the types of DLC you can expect.
For sure. So, is it more Hot Wheels or not Wheels? That's a good one, that. That's an absolute golden one, that.
Ouch!
Let's find out.
The storyline follows the professor who has essentially made a shrink and grow ray, as you do, and it's all gone horribly wrong and made all these creatures massive. Now, the only problem is his ray is broken and he only now has the ability to shrink stuff. So you can see where this is going.
Yep.
He shrinks you down and them, and you have to defeat them in races.
Yeah, basically what that equates to then is a host of races, as Mark said, with new characters included and 5 boss battles as you go.
Now, gameplay-wise, it's very similar to the previous game, I'd say, with the emphasis being on drifting around the corners to increase your boost, running over items on the ground to do exactly the same, and trying to go through different checkpoints.
As well as that boost, there is now a jump in the game, a new feature for this sequel, and you'll need this at times to get across chasms within the races, but also to avoid obstacles that you'll find on the track. There's also what's called a lateral dash. It's basically your classic side swipe where you try to take enemies out that are either side of you. This can be useful when you're kind of stuck in that middle of the road pack that happens so often in racing games.
As far as game modes, you've got things like single race, elimination, time trials, split screen, and various others, including loads of different online modes. And it does play well. Each car does handle very differently to the last. You'll see different statistics after each race. You'll gain a currency that you can put into the car, so you can buy upgrades in 3 different areas. One of them relates to obstacles that you'll find on the track, one to do with your boost, and the other to do with handling and acceleration. Now, based on what you choose, it will actually lock different areas out. So Glen is someone that concentrates on handling and acceleration, which is probably very wise, but I like to go for those boosts. So you can really tailor the car to suit your style. It also has 3 different tiers which reflect the overall power of your car, and they can be unlocked with the unlocked tokens and the game currency that you'll gain through those story races.
In terms of the tracks themselves, obviously they're based around the classic orange pieces that you would snap together to make a track with Hot Wheels. Now, I think in terms of general track design, I liked the environments. I liked the way that the environments were incorporated into the actual tracks themselves. Things like having golf balls on the track on the crazy golf course, things like that. I did feel that sometimes there were too many beginner's traps in the races. So for example, you'd have a barrier right at the end of a jump. If you hit that barrier, you lose all momentum and fall off, and there's very little way of avoiding it other than knowing it's there for the second lap, you know, or for future reference. Beginner's traps obviously were prevalent in the 80s. Games were so short, they had to extend the runtime somehow. They're not needed in 2023, you know, and it's an easy fix. You could just put a few warning signs or something coming up. It would just make the tracks feel a bit more fair and not feel as if you have to have raced them at least once to know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting, as Glen says, those do come up on a few, and then on other ones it's absolutely fine, but it's there enough that it does become a little bit of an issue at times. And as Glen says again, it's so easy to avoid that with just a little bit of obvious signposting.
Yeah, I think it's probably a case of them wanting to really get the most out of their new features, the jump. Yeah. And they've kind of overdone it to an extent, or at least in my opinion, on some of the tracks. You know, I preferred the more pure racing of the first game, where you didn't have to worry about that so much. But I suppose over time I might learn to enjoy that feature more, you know?
Now, what I will say is that in the options, there are accessibility options to take that difficulty out. So I believe there's one that will help you with things like the jumps.
Yes.
That will keep you on the track. So if it is a child that's playing, you can actually put it onto easy, put all the accessibility modes on, or even do that for yourself till you learn the jump, so that it doesn't become something that you trial and error.
Absolutely. The way that these cars are acquired, it's a nice callback to going to the store and buying, you know, the Hot Wheels car in the packaging.
Yeah, you can preview any that you want to potentially purchase, and so far at least, I haven't had any other packs thrown at me. You know, I've seen nothing that's like, here's a Batman pack.
Yeah,
why don't you buy this?
Yeah,
and I think that was a bit of an issue in the previous game.
Yeah, in the first game, when you went to select a car to purchase with your in-game money, they kind of threw in the ones that you purchased with real money too. Now, for me, I didn't like the way that was handled, because if, as a grown-up, it makes no odds. But if you're buying it for a child, and obviously they're seeing these cars, they're seeing the Batmobile, they're seeing the Jurassic Park one, whatever, and they want that one, and it requires real game or real world money, I beg your pardon, I just think that's a bit, I don't like that, you know, handling it that way.
Now, many of you will be wondering how the track designer has come into this version, and it is absolutely excellent. You can choose any of the stages, and they essentially work like a large sandbox. It gives you a brief tutorial and just shows you the basics, but then you can create whatever you want. Now, it's funny because it actually enables you to make better tracks than the ones that are in here, because you can introduce things like the signposting. You know, you can put your signs and show when there's jumps coming up and things like that, and just make it a little bit more the way that you want it. You can take those online, or you can play those in multiplayer with a friend, and I think that's probably a good time to talk about split screen. So it does have a 2-player split screen mode. I don't think there's a 4-player mode, and you can play online. And that allows you to do any of the different race types against a friend, and then both of you can get frustrated and lose against the computer.
Yeah, again, it's just about learning those new mechanics. You know, it's very heavy-handed in, these are the new mechanics of the game, we're going to throw them all at you. So you're going to get bashed off the track by that side swipe by the AI, you're going to fall into those beginner's traps that I mentioned to begin with, and you're probably going to come last a few times because of that. But it's just about learning these new ways, especially if you're used to the older game, and as you do start to incorporate those into your play style, obviously you'll start to get those first place finishes.
I was always a Ridge Racer player back in the day, and I do like the drifting here. It's not done exactly the same as something like Mario Kart, is it?
No, it's slightly different. I mean, for me, there's always been a couple of different ways that you handle drifting. You have that turn into the drift that Mario Kart uses, I believe that obviously a few other games use. Then you have that one where you kind of just keep it going and you steer with the drift. Things like Ridge Racer are actually a good example, and this is what's used here. And it's just about getting used to using that, especially on the tracks where there are no barriers, and you're going to have to stay on track, you know?
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway, though, is that it actually feels like, although they are staggering some content packs, and there is obviously the deluxe version that has probably some extra bits and bobs in there, some of these packs, it feels like a complete game for once. It's not making me feel like I haven't bought the full game.
Yep, I think that's a fair point. Should we move on to controls now? So we've mentioned things like the drifting, so we won't go into that again. For the most part, I think it handles very well. I like the fact that all of the cars handle differently. I think that's quite noticeable in your sessions when you're playing. The one thing I had an issue with, and I'm going to say now, it may have been a controller issue, it may have been the game, I don't know, but sometimes I felt that jump wasn't responsive enough. There were times when I pressed jump and the car didn't jump, and I hurtled down and lost 5-6 places in a race, and it happened more than once.
Yeah, so the jump is tied to the boost, so you can't jump and you can't sideswipe without any boost. So if your boost is empty, you can't do it. And I wonder if a combination of that affected that, because it did for me. I hit something and fell down. I was like, what the heck? And I had no boost.
Maybe then. I mean, you don't have to boost to jump, but you have to have some boost available.
Oh, I think you've got to have some boost available, yes.
Yeah. So that's an odd decision.
If
that's the case, then it's not a control issue, but it's a gameplay issue. Either way, that's a bit strange, you know?
It just feels a bit unfair.
Yeah.
You know, you're forcing a jump, but you can't jump.
Exactly right.
For me, the controls were affected by performance, as we'll talk about in the next section. And sometimes a little negatively.
So in terms of overall aesthetic then, let's start there. Obviously it uses its Hot Wheels license very well. As I mentioned, you have the orange track. The environments that you'll come across are very well designed. They're used to good effect, and the cars themselves have a lot of character to them.
Yeah, these environments are going to appeal to everyone, really. You know, you've got your arcade in there, you've got your crazy golf, your mini golf. There's one that's based around like a dinosaur museum. They're just excellent. They're really well designed. Lots of little details in there. At one point you jump through a dinosaur's mouth. They're just very, very good. And obviously you can design your own stuff freely within them.
In terms of performance then, so it does have a performance mode, doesn't it?
Yeah, it uses, and I've not seen this actually I don't think I've seen this in any games on Switch. Basically it allows you to toggle on AMD FSR 1.0, which is initially straight away is a bit odd to me because FSR 2.0 is out and it's more effective. So you can switch that on, and what it's doing is it's lowering the game resolution, but then using AI upscaling to make it try and look the same to give you more frames per second. And it literally says AMD FSR will give you better frame rates. It does, but it will still, if you've got tons of you on screen, and we saw this a lot in multiplayer, it will still drop below 30. And in a racing game where you need precise control, if a frame suddenly drops when you're going to do your slide, it makes it more difficult to control.
Yeah, it's almost as as much as the graphical fidelity improves when you turn that off, it's almost pointless having it, isn't it? Because you're never going to pick that over performance.
Exactly right. And there are some stages, it has to be said, like in the arcade and another one that we did where performance isn't so much of an issue. Maybe there's just less rendering going on in the background, and you can have that off and have the nice visual and it still maintain 30, but the outdoor stage in particular really struggles. Having said all of that, I still think most people, especially children, they're not going to care. It maintains 30 most of the time, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's never to a point where it completely affects the gameplay unless you're almost looking for it or you're really wanting to get those boosts spot on. So just be aware of it, you know?
Yeah, I'd say 1 or 2 patches and it'll be perfect. As for value, this one's going to set you back £44.99 or your regional equivalent. There's offline 1 or 2 player split screen. It has online for up to 12 players and obviously everything we've spoken about.
Yeah, there does seem to be a nice variety of cars that you can unlock in-game, and there is a deluxe version available which is about £75, so yeah, pretty expensive, that includes all future DLC packs for the next 6 months, give or take. Yeah.
There are tons of different tracks. You've obviously essentially got unlimited replayability when it comes to building your own stuff. And they seem to have made enough change to that area that it feels more advanced, like you can create everything you want, even down to the tilts of the tracks and the styles, magnetic tracks. And you just give them free reign. So yeah, and just in terms of that feeling of getting a full package, it feels like it, which is nice. So if you were considering picking it up, I think overall we think it's definitely worth it. It gets a SwitchUp score of 82%.
Lovely job. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. Don't forget, if you're looking for eShop credit to pick this game up or anything else, of course, you can get your eShop cards via our website, switchup.gg. Doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back in cashback and a further 5% off straight discount by using the code SwitchUp.
Thanks so much to our Patreons and members, and as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch Up. Cheers, guys. See ya!